One. Bing, 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 and we're live. And it is the BetaSaaSers AutoGraders meeting of instructors. And we have Rose and Richard and Michael and Armando, and I think also Paul in the background. And yes, so yeah, I think Richard, they're maybe having connection issues. So what we've been doing recently is just sort of, rather than diving straight into fascinating discussions though they are, is just going around and checking what agenda items each person might have. Should we maybe start? Rose was first. Well, Michael go. But Rose, yeah. Do you have any particular items on the agenda today?
Just that I was interested in that conversation that we had yesterday, and I started reading about the difference between before groups and let, and they're saying pretty much that they prefer let rather than before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the book mentions that.
In the engineering software as a service, yes, it may not be emphasized there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we even mentioned it at all. I think this is an artifact of the fact that some of these tools and the perceived best practices move faster than book revision moves.
Absolutely, I understand that.
Also having, this is also maybe just my own lack of experience. I have used both forms, the before form and the let form, and my sense is that it's a little bit less awkward. If you're trying to do anything in a before block besides setting up variables, to me, it feels a little less awkward to use before than to use let. But that, as so many things in programming, that may be partially personal taste.
Yeah.
Why is it less awkward?
Or what?
Why do you say it's less awkward?
It might be a holdover from where I learned the let syntax was from Scheme, and basically let is just a way of doing lambda bindings. So it makes sense if what you're doing is trying to set up temporary variables whose scope you want to persist through the test case. But as often as not, in my before blocks, I often will set up some other conditions, or I'll do something side effectful that is not strictly setting a variable. And syntactically, you can do that with a let block because both before and let are really lambda declarations, so you can do it either way. But it just feels awkward to write it in a let block because I see let blocks as basically saying I'm establishing some variable bindings that I'm going to need to use in these test cases. And when I try to do something outside of those variable bindings, you remember the use of its, like it and its was that was in favor for a while for writing specs. That works pretty well when what you're doing is essentially testing attribute values. Even though you can use it and its to write specs that do something other than testing attribute values, it feels awkward to do it. It feels like it's fighting the notation's intention to make things more clear. Anyway, but that's, as I said, that's just my opinion. My view is, when there's multiple notations, I try to use the one that seems like it is most naturally designed to express the problem. And for me, let achieves that when you're using it to set up variables in a before block. It starts feeling a little holding a hand behind your back if you're trying to do other things in the before block. But that's just me.
Yeah, I think I probably agree that I think it's not a question of either or. In as much as the code that we were looking at yesterday, Rose, I refactored the before block into a couple of let statements because effectively what the before block was doing was setting up two variables. And the let has the advantage that it will do it lazily. And, I think it highlights the variable name and, avoids the need for the instance variable. But absolutely, if you're doing like a multi-line thing, then you use the before block. So I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah,
Go on,
both
Michael.
make sense.
Oh, I was just going to say something like what Sam was saying, that the before block with the let's preferred over the before block with the instance variables. I guess kind of like what Armando was suggesting, and that's primarily because it's lazy, but also because if you reference an instance variable that hasn't been set, it just kind of goes nil, without any warning. And then if you reference a variable that hasn't been set with a let, like a regular variable, it'll blow up on you, and you'll know right away.
All right.
I guess my point is I'm looking to update all my previous solutions, and I'm, as always, I'm trying to get more proficient with RSpec, and I'm just looking for some sort of forum or something. Obviously, books, there's no way a book can keep up with the speed of change, and I'm just trying to think of what are the places I can go, or where are the places I can go to kind of get a sense of, what's the latest and greatest, why is one thing preferred over another, etc. I mean, you met Paul, but Paul has his own business, and we don't intersect very often. I mean, at the university, I'm the only one who's using these tools, etc. And I'm living in a vacuum, is
Right.
basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to stay current and on top of things, but it's tough.
Yes.
Yeah, no, look, it's tough for me too, right? And I am not the only person doing it here. I have a ton of students who are, how often a student will ask me a question about, hey, how do I integrate the foobar framework with Rails? And I'm like, I've never heard of the foobar framework, right?
Right, yeah.
But what I often, for things like this, I wonder, so, if a student asked me this question, I would probably do what I've been doing for the last few minutes, which is start trolling Stack Overflow to see what other people have written about it who are more current than me. What about, have you thought about devoting a portion of each class to like, discovery minute or something where, so like next week's topic is when should you use let and when should you use before? And you assign some small number of students to, work in pairs or threes or something, and then do like a little 5-minute technical presentation at the beginning of class.
Actually, I have a section. I have a section of every course or every class where we try to hit something like that. My problem is when I don't know to ask the question. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, if you have a community that's talking about all this stuff, well, you hear it and then you say, oh, let me look this up. Oh, I see. Okay. Wow, it's an interesting discussion. I'm going to expose my students to this. But in cases where, maybe I'm just unaware of something.
Right. No, I get it. How did you hear about this one?
Well, okay, so I was having a really stupid problem yesterday, which turned out to be something that I had done previously that was very stupid, and I couldn't figure out why. And I just sent a note to Sam, and Sam suggested I use a let instead of a before block, and I said, I kind of had seen them occasionally, but I really hadn't, it wasn't mentioned in the book, and I hadn't heard any discussion about them, and so then I looked up like why it would be preferred in some cases and the others. So that brought up a topic that I wouldn't have thought to look for otherwise. So then I started hunting all around and finding out about it. You see what I'm saying? But
so what you want is like some sort of a site or a forum where you can see like what is the kind of meme of the week in
exactly.
In Rails or software as a service, APIs.
Yeah, because in vacuum world, I'm not hearing it.
Yeah. That's okay. That's an interesting problem. You want to know which questions to ask. You don't care about you can get the answer, but
absolutely. What are the questions? Yeah, and I mean, I don't even have when they like the beginning of the semester, a TA halftime, and then I had her one day, and they took the TA away, and so I was like weeks and weeks and weeks without a TA, and then they assigned me 8 new students at week 4, so it's like I'm always buried. And they always, nobody knows the subject matter. I have to teach them. Like if I get a TA or a CA or anybody, I have to give them everything from scratch. And again, it leaves me little time for me to think about the bigger questions I should be asking. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there. There's great stuff that we're getting here. We have failed in the mission that I set us at the beginning, which was to go around and get those set of high-level things. We've kind of done a deep.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's my fault.
But it's great, interesting stuff. Go on, Michael.
I would say where I've heard of this issue, probably the first time where I heard of it recently or within the last 3 years was probably a RailsCon talk from 2014. RailsCon talks are kind of useful, but of course they're time consuming.
Oh, so that's another
And
great suggestion.
RailsCon conferences in general are kind of interesting. A lot of them are online. You can get
Yeah,
videos, but
yeah.
they consume time to watch them.
But so shall we just quickly, in case we don't, in case somebody's got some burning thing that must be addressed today.
Right.
Rose, were there any other headline things that you wanted to touch on today?
No, just I'm trying to get better, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way to get better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I've got more suggestions on that, but rather than diving straight into them, I might just check in with Richard. Did you have any issues on your plate today?
I'm here in the middle of well, at the end of my class, and it's the one right before spring break, so there's still students here. We were just using the AutoGrader. We don't have anything particularly like conceptually interesting. We were getting some intermittent of these like 503 errors, but it seems to be working sporadically.
Okay.
But just mention.
Otherwise, nothing blocking.
No, I'm just like my head down here.
Okay. Yep. Good.
And the other thing I could mention is a student mentioned he was talking about it's like submitting and pushing, like making it easier to push to cloud to GitHub right from Cloud9, and talking about like some curl scripts and so forth that he was going to be looking into. And I was talking about, well, maybe we can figure out some kind of script to submit directly to the AutoGrader from Cloud9. So that's like just a side issue that came up in a conversation that seemed to be interesting.
Yes, that would be interesting. I mean, I think to push to GitHub from Cloud9, you don't need a curl script. You just can do it with the git command.
You know what? I understand what you're saying, but there was something more interesting that he was doing. Maybe it was the fork and clone. It was like just condensing it all, but fine. But then I was thinking about the AutoGrader.
No, that's huge. Yeah, I mean, I think if the student had a button in Cloud9 and they could just press it and it would submit it, or a script or what have you. Right. If he can come up with something there, that would be fantastic.
Right. So we talked about like looking into that over the break.
Yeah. Good stuff. Excellent. Armando, any key items on your agenda?
Yeah, I did want to ask, the BetaSaaSers community out there. We're contemplating at Berkeley splitting the course into two pieces, essentially one of which is the open-ended team project, and the other of which is everything else. And my question is, for the everything else course, is anybody teaching a version of this material where the students are doing sort of a canned project, in the sense that everybody's creating the same app, or writing an app that satisfies the same customer need, but they're all implementing it independently and from scratch. So something that has the flavor of an open-ended project, except it's not truly open-ended in the sense that the instructor already has sort of a reasonable reference architecture, reasonable reference models against which the students' work could be compared. I would think of this project would be like the training wheels version of doing a real client project, because the students would have to do all of the same things. They'd have to use Tracker and write tests and deploy and everything, except that the target would be better defined in advance. So has anyone been doing anything like that? Sounds like no.
No, but it's a fascinating idea.
I mean, I think the problem we're trying to solve with that is that if that existed, and if there was a quite robust set of AutoGraders around it, it would make at least that part of the course more or less infinitely scalable. Our pain point in scaling the course any farther at Berkeley is the number of projects. It's just unreasonable to expect a TA to be able to keep track of more than maybe half a dozen projects. It's just a question of brain cycles, So the idea is that if the project portion of the course was offered separately, it could be offered basically year-round, because the TAs assigned to it would only be doing project management, and we could sort of spread out the student load over the entire year, versus having to cram all those students into one semester or a summer or something. So, okay, well, if anybody would be interested in contributing to the development of such a thing, it's going to be a prerequisite for us splitting the course, because even the non-project part of the course will be required to have some sort of design element in it. So anybody who's interested in helping develop something like that, let me know, and we might start collaborative development on it. But,
yeah, and there may be other instructors who are not here who've done some things like this. I wonder if Kristen has got something like that. So we could maybe ask
And
on the mailing list. Go on, Commander.
The other thing, just for your information, is that I've been inhaling books on microservices because I want to have some material on microservices in the course and in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out thinking that a substantive revision to the chapter on SaaS architecture and service-oriented architecture might be sufficient. The jury is still out on whether that's true, but essentially the service-oriented architecture discussion should pretty much become a discussion about microservices, because that's very clearly the way the world is going. And I think that's going to entail, much better coverage of authentication for microservices, JSON, REST as a first-class citizen, probably some sort of an assignment around dealing with a JSON-oriented REST API and maybe doing some Jasmine tests. So sometime between now and the summer, I'm hoping to get started on those things, and I'll probably be recruiting help from able-bodied individuals.
Cool. Good stuff. And we can come back around to all of these. I'll just mention things on my mind are learning at scale. I guess it's when you're going to be in Cambridge in a month, right?
Yes,
Commander. And so, I maybe need to work out if I can get there myself. The MOOC, we're still in that holding pattern, but maybe there's some movement there. I'm thinking about whether to restart the AV102 course for training the TAs for that. Now that we've had an instructor review from Berkeley to make a series of final changes to the course. Other things are that we, as I mentioned to you before, Armando, the AutoGrader, we need to get a solution in place for the AutoGrader logs. And there's also, I don't remember the email I sent, I think there is maybe some room to save some money on the AutoGraders by shutting off old instances and so on. So, that'd be
great.
Yeah.
I mean, so far the department has not come down on me about it. We're using sort of this department slush fund to pay those bills. But if we can spend less money, I'm always all for that. By the way, I can speak briefly to what's going on in the MOOC. We finally have, this is a hangout on air, so I don't want to say negative things about the administration, but getting the professional certificate deal done with Berkeley has been like pulling teeth without Novocaine and while kicking dead whales down the beach wrapped in barbed wire. But it is now mostly a done deal. We're just waiting on the official endorsements. It's very likely that we will have an official endorsement from GitHub, which will be great. I mean, the kind of thing that would say, the kind of people we like working at GitHub are people who have mastered material like this, or something to that effect.
Right.
So hopefully in the next week or two, edX is really just waiting on that, and then we can pull the trigger. So I'm continuing to ride that hard. Regarding the AutoGrader logs, is there a possibility of using like one of these logging as a service things to do it?
Maybe.
Or a roll bar or something like that? Because A, they all have free plans that are pretty reasonable, and B, I can be very persuasive when it comes to having them upgrade to a paid plan, but give a break because we're a nonprofit, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. Indeed. So certainly there are, we may well could. I guess the thing is, the thing that's the little flag in the back of my mind is we do need to do something before we like re-enter the new MOOC phase. Anyway, but we can circle back around to that. So now we've got all those different things. I certainly didn't want to cut off the discussion that we started there before with Rose, because I think this is a very interesting thing about the before versus let, and I've got notes on all those things there. So if we just come back to that, the thing that I would say Rose, is that actually for a long time it's been frustrating with RSpec because there hasn't been a book, but there is, as I was saying to you yesterday, now this new book. This is Myron Marston. He's the maintainer, the main core maintainer of RSpec, and so kind of this book, which actually we've got a discount for people who join the premium mob service, but it's out in beta. I've been reviewing the book for him. It's like up to date, the latest version of RSpec. So I think if you are following the way that they write RSpec in this book, this is the way it's being done by the people who write RSpec, who are responsible for its maintenance, and it's going to be setting the standards going forward. So at least as far as RSpec's concerned, I would say follow this.
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely going to buy the book, and I'm excited that it's all up to date. But as Homer Simpson says, all your problems will soon be over for a couple of months. So I think I probably have like at least 2 linear feet of shelf space devoted to books like you know, testing with RSpec, testing with RSpec 2, you know, the Rails companion for Rails 3, the Rails companion for Rails 4. So, you know, the number of trees, there must be entire forests being felled to keep up with the updates. But if the ebook is usable, I'd be happy to buy it. Ebooks seem to vary in terms of how well formatted they are. But if have you been beta testing the ebook?
They sent me a PDF copy of the thing, which I think actually their ebooks generally are, basically.
Yeah, I think Pragmatic does that, right? That you can download the, you know, ebook reader version or the PDF version.
I mean, I worked through all the examples for this and like actually ran them, and I mean, this was pretty much the kind of stuff that we had in the boot camp. It's like step by step, work through. Here's RSpec. I think they've got a. I mean, I would say comparing this with the previous version, the RSpec 2 book, which I loved and I thought was great in terms of like more from the agile side. For this one, they've pushed the agile off and said, well, you want to learn more about the agile, and if you want to do Cucumber or whatever, you go somewhere else. They're really focused on the RSpec, but they also go through making a full, the test driving the creation of a Sinatra app through the RSpec with all the different levels from acceptance tests, integration tests, unit tests, and so on. So it's I think it's pretty solid, and I think you're absolutely right. It's like, you know, problems over a couple of months. At the same time, you know, I think that there's a better chance, like, because these guys they're not sort of writing about it and they're going to move on. These are the guys who are actually the open source people who are responsible for maintaining RSpec itself. So there's a chance. What the particular problem we had with the previous RSpec book is that the last version was in 2011. So it was, you know, hopefully this will be updated more frequently. But anyway.
Sure. No, thanks for the heads up. I'm purchasing it right now.
Yeah, and so we may be doing a mob on this to sort of work through that if there's enough interest in that to kind of go through the examples, because I think they're pretty strong. Rose,
I noticed somewhere that they said on the pitch for the book that if you buy it, you can actually contact the authors with questions or suggestions or whatever.
Sure.
So that's a plus. I mean, you know, most books don't say that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that particularly it's the beta model. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and I did have a question about what Armando was proposing. It sounds like so. Were you thinking of having a canned project in like the first half of the course, and then a real project in the second? Is that what the suggestion was? If you split it up.
So the idea would be that what we have now at Berkeley is a 4-unit course, which translates to 12 hours a week, and into that course we've crammed everything. And the proposal is to have a 3-unit course, so there'd actually be, you know, less lecture time, less meeting times, and it would include all of the current homeworks, exams, blah blah blah, plus maybe 2 iterations worth of a canned project. Yeah. And then there would be a separate course. Yeah. For 1 or 2 units, where the only thing you would do in that course is get matched up with a customer and work on an open-ended project, and you have to complete the first. The idea is that by the time
I wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah, you've sort of done a mini project already. Like, you've gone through all of the mechanics. The only thing that's being added that's new is the customer has an open-ended and, you know, unknown app.
Yeah, that sounds perfect, actually. Do you have a topic for this canned project? Any ideas?
I don't have one yet, and what I was going to do is sort of survey my students, because the things professors think of tend to be considered hopelessly outdated by the students. So, but you know, if you all want to poll your students and say what would be sort of an interesting, I mean, it used to be
a fake news generator to manipulate the.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah. Manipulate world powers. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
I think it sounds great. Maybe we could manipulate them in a sensible direction.
Yeah, I think that the tricky thing with choosing a topic is, you know, it used to be like, hey, build a little blog site or build a little social network, and the problem is, it's not gratifying to build that when, you know, Facebook exists and is serving like 2 billion people, right? So the trick is to find something that is compelling and interesting, even when deployed at modest scale, like something that, you know, they and their friends might imagine using or thinking was interesting. Maybe a game of some kind. I don't know.
Internet of Things, something to control the dorm lights or something. I don't know.
But anyway, yeah, like, I don't know, smart home stuff, Internet of Things stuff. I don't know, a back-end service for Alexa to do something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, Alexa coordination would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
I'd certainly be interested. Is this something that you might tackle over the summer?
my hope is to maybe even start tackling it before then, although I don't know how realistic that hope is. But yes, it's something that I would like to have in place. I'm due to teach the course in the fall, whether I do it with or without lectures. So I would ideally like to have something dry runnable by then. But sooner the better.
I mean, I would love to participate in something like that. I think it would certainly be a win-win in every imaginable way.
Okay, I will probably, when I actually start up on, I'll probably start a Google Doc or something, and on a future call, I'll invite you all to it. I just haven't had time to actually sit down and do it yet.
Cool. All right. So we'll then just go. So I think we've then maybe covered this topic, Rose. I think we definitely empathize with the trying to stay up to date with all of the different technology while teaching the class and so on. I think even being embedded as a full-time, in a company doing software engineering, it's still a challenge to get connected. Actually, one of the things I do find is that listening to the podcasts for me is a very good way of keeping up to date with what the people are talking about. In that, I can certainly give you a list of my podcasts. Does anybody else have any other suggestions about keeping up to date that Rose was expressing as a concern?
I'm just curious, Sam. Do you have any local friends that you sit and like over a coffee and talk about this stuff?
Not locally. I mean, I basically, through the Agile Ventures community, I chat with people, around the world, and I kind of review pull requests that come in from people around the world, and so I see different bits of coding styles there. I mean, I'm also there are other. I mean, there's a lot of Slack communities now these days, and so like I'm kind of connected to a lot of people through that. That's. But yeah, I mean, I'm in like this area of Northwest London. Although there's quite a lot of Ruby programmers and so on in Central London. Out here where I am in the suburbs, not so much.
Yeah, cooler.
But there is a metro.
There is indeed there is a train that can take me in and feed me different kinds of viruses. I think I do like remote working. There's less chance to get sick. So I think
I mean, I have to admit, it's like the one thing I miss. It's the one thing I miss about back home. I kind of like being out in the boonies, but I do miss the subway.
Oh, right. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I think I like it in small doses myself. That's the thing.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something about taking the subway every morning. I don't know.
Well, feeling there's a connection because you're pressed close to the seething mass of humanity.
Yeah. You're one of the workers.
Indeed.
It gets your brain going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they finally they opened the Second Avenue subway. Can you believe it?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Well, it's something that's been in planning / construction since like 1929. So it's kind of a big deal when they opened this year. Things take a while in New York. Anyway.
All right.
Oh God, yes. Oh my goodness.
So just going on to.
I have to ask my brother.
Richard mentioned this, that we did have an AutoGrader outage over the weekend that was affecting only the Spox. I raised that with edX, and it was eventually addressed.
Did that have anything to do with the AWS outage, or was that just totally different?
Yeah, I wonder.
It was unclear that conceivably, but as I say, it did not seem to affect the main grader at all. And as usual, edX, they don't seem to want to get. They're like, we've now done. I think they talked about changing some configuration settings. Nothing had changed on our end as far as I could tell. Unclear. I'm interested to hear. I mean, Richard, were you saying you've been having occasional 503 errors today?
Like about an hour ago, just a few times.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we went back and forth, and then it worked. So nothing. Just mentioning because we're on the phone together.
Yeah. Well, we also have. I mean, I have a separate. There's John Ultra, who's also got a Spock, and he's finding that he can submit as staff, but he has a problem where he can't submit his students' work, and I'm trying to follow up with him. So, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, Richard, yeah, certainly very interested in anything your student can come up with to make the AutoGraders submission process any easier. So that's kind of covered Richard's items, unless anybody wants to dwell on those. So we talked about splitting the course in two, trying to come up with this kind of canned project idea. It's something we've also talked about at Agile Ventures, of having some kind of like practice project that people could start on before they came to the working with the big projects, which people can find intimidating. Not going to create a Google Doc. And then we have so the Learning at Scale conference, that's like April the 21st or something, isn't it, Armando?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So yes, I'm thinking that. Do you think that would be a useful coordination point for the two of us?
I mean, it might. I'm certainly going to be there. My only hesitation is that because I'm on the steering committee, I'm probably going to, at the times when everybody else is released and free, I'm probably going to be corralled into steering committee meetings. So sure. I don't know how much free time I'll have, and I'm getting there basically just the night before.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to make as much time as I can. I just have no idea how much that will be.
No, sure. Well, then there was the same. This is the same meeting that was in Edinburgh that we both went to last year.
Yeah. I'm also going to be, in case this is any easier for you, Sam, I will be at eMOOCs in Spain in May.
Are you going to be at is that the Open edX? Or
No. It's the European MOOC stakeholders, eMOOCs.
Okay.
So that's in Madrid, and I will be there on the 25th and 26th. I'm giving a talk on the 26th.
Okay.
But the 25th, I'm mostly open. So if you happen to be there.
Okay, that's more affordable. I mean, the only other thing that I was thinking about for this one was when I met all the edX folks in Edinburgh, and I was thinking that it was a chance for me to meet more edX people. But anyway, we can talk about that separately.
You could certainly do that, but you definitely want to arrange it in advance with them, because I know that edX is planning to send a bunch of people to Learning at Scale, since it's right across the street from them.
Right.
So
Indeed. Yeah. So we talked about the MOOC. We talked about the logs and the costs and so on. I can follow up with that separately. I'm kind of in two minds about this, the TA training course, just as much as I feel like really, because the course that we have that does this, it sort of both tries to sort of be a part 3 and do TA training, and really it should be split out, I think. And then that's a lot of work, and anyway, so that's I will agonize about that. But yeah, that's all my stuff. Oh, I was going to say, you're right. The textbook, MIT Press. But you're going to be speaking to MIT Press about that on April 21st. Okay, yeah, that's all my things. And anything else that we need to cover today?
Not from my end.
Rose has just posted a link, which is Paul McMahon's books. There, this is Paul, who's in the coffee shop with her, and. The book, The Essence of Software Engineering. Are you familiar with these books, Armando?
I am not, although I wouldn't conclude anything from that fact.
Indeed. Well, thanks for sharing, Rose. Lovely to meet Paul at the beginning of the meeting. Right.
I think the stuff we're doing is more confined. I think the stuff we've been doing is more confined to a particular domain. And I know Paul comes out of a totally different domain, so that doesn't surprise me.
All right. Okay, well, I'm going to need to get on myself now. So if there's no further business, I think we might wrap the meeting up.
Yep. My spring break starts when this meeting ends.
All right. Yeah, go spring break. You're off to Mexico, I guess, for a party.
Woohoo!
Yep. Good stuff. All right. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. I guess same time next week, and we'll catch up in the Slack and email as the week goes.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.